How are you, Yoshi?
I'm very good. I'm very good, mate.
Yeah, another week, another good weekend, I hope.
Yeah, I feel like you always ask me, and I always say I'm very good, but I truly am.
Well, in the world of AI, there's always something to keep us busy, isn't there? So um, it feels like this week's a week of consolidation for me. We've had a lot of really busy weeks over the last month or so with conference season upon us, with the
hmm
APM conference, the Digital Construction Week, Project Hack, etc., etc. So a little bit of a week to reflect is quite good before we go into the summer lull. But that doesn't stop the news coming in, does it? And our newsletter was published this morning, which was Monday for everyone listening in. Again, lots of big stories. Which one do you want to touch on first? Anything particularly take your
Yeah,
fancy?
I think it's Ilyas Skiva's new venture into developing safe
Yeah.
superintelligence. Because now I feel like I've been living under a rock, and then we've somehow skipped AGI and gone straight to super artificial general
Yeah.
intelligence.
What is say? So this is a question I put on LinkedIn. What is safe super intelligence? Is this something that's
Yeah,
just been made up, or does it actually mean something?
yeah, so we can look at it progressively, right? So with AGI, it relates to where AI comes at a similar level of capability to humans, right? And it can conduct human level tasks at a reasonable or quite a competent standard.
Mm.
I think with super intelligence now, we're looking at capabilities surpassing the level of what humans can achieve. So just to give you some context, right, and I can look this up in regards to project management. So if you were looking at current AI as it is, the capabilities will be the AI tool can help manage project schedules, track progress, assign tasks, and send reminders. But
Mm.
when you look at some of the limitations of that, current artificial intelligence is works through predefined frameworks, right, and certain parameters. Now, as you go up that chain, and if you were to look at an AGI, so you were looking at advanced general intelligence as a project manager, this is where it can start to autonomously plan, execute, and deliver projects. It can monitor, it can report, and it can learn quite fast, and it can adapt its management style. So when you now mentioned, okay, what is super intelligence? So this is where it goes. This is way beyond our expectations.
Mm.
Things start to get a lot more advanced. It doesn't only just manage projects, but it innovates processes. It
Mm.
sets standards and frameworks, right? So it's starting to
That's the
take
rules.
on that level higher. Yeah, it sets its own rules to precise outputs, right? And it can think, it's got strong internal models, it's got emotional intelligence, it can adjust its behavior. So this is where it becomes a lot more like humans, but it does what we do, but better. So this skip to super intelligence is fascinating. But the thing that really sticks out to me is Ilya saying that he wants to do it in tandem with making it safe. And this has been a topic that we've been discussing in the last few weeks around safety.
And that's why he fell out with OpenAI. There was all the drama that people would have heard about last week, but effectively he kissed and made up and then left again. And now he's created his own company. And that really is, to me, a big message to OpenAI, which is, I'm going to do it properly. Right? You're
Yeah.
not taking this stuff seriously.
Yeah, and he's got a point. And
Yeah.
what I like is his level of commitment. He has named his company Safe Superintelligence
Mm.
in the pursuit of safe superintelligence, which means he should have one product, which he says is where he's trying to avert or trying to navigate around commercial pressures, right? He doesn't want commercial pressures. So he's kind of treating it more like a lab.
Mm.
And the difference between what a lot of other AI leading companies are doing is that he's looking at safety and reaching superintelligence in tandem. They're interlinked. So they have equal weighting. He's not developing capability and then saying, okay, how do we then start to do this safely? He's combining them together.
It
That's
comes
where
at
we
a
start to see some
time
development.
that OpenAI are thinking about going from a non-profit to a for-profit company. They're
Yes.
going in different directions, aren't they? And it's going to be, it's going to be, yeah, who wins that battle is going to be very important for our industry and the way things go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I also was interested in the graph of the week on the newsletter,
Mhm.
which looked at the escalating costs of training AI models, and I think this is the thing that people don't understand is that even though it's impressive what's going on, the amount of energy and the amount of costs to train these models is absolutely ginormous, which is why you've only really got the big companies going for it, your Googles, your Microsoft, i.e. OpenAI, your Metas, your NVIDIA, because the cost is staggering. Some of the stats I saw here, the Gemini one, which is trained in 2023, at 91.4 million.
Yeah.
So this is it. It doesn't, and that's only going up, right?
Yeah. So it mentions here GPT-4 at 78.4 million. But then it mentions some earlier models, Transformer in 2017 at much lower costs. But it just shows you the level of belief people have in AI technologies. And this also aligns with NVIDIA's stocks rising to becoming the most valuable company in the world, which then obviously dropped back down again when it dropped by 3% on Thursday. But it shows you where people's minds are at. It's showing you that these tools are revolutionary and they're going to be in our workflows and in everything that we do, and it's here to stay. It's not just, I mean, it is stipulation, but there's a strong commitment to that stimulation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I know what you say around, the wheels there, everyone wants to, but is it a little bit of FOMO as well? I get the feeling that a lot of these big companies, they're putting the money in because they know there's only one shot at this. And if they don't, and they lose, there's no coming back.
Yeah. And you can kind of see that with Google. I know they've had a few hiccups and now people look at the likes of OpenAI as the market leader when they were nowhere to be heard of. A few years back, Google were
we just had that conversation, didn't we? Which will be published later with Phil Clifford Brown from AI, where he was saying, well, they chose to use their OpenAI as their model because it's perceived as the market leader. It's really hard to dethrone.
Yeah, and you think about how long Google have had that monopoly for so long, but because they made a few slip-ups along the way, and it's now had this huge effect where people are saying, oh, well, it's Google, they've got to prove themselves. Well, they've been proving themselves for the last 10, 15 years. But because of this mishap with AI, OpenAI jumped right to the forefront and everyone sees them as the market leaders. Yeah.
And I mean, Google, I've got it from a few directions. There's another thing on the newsletter where there's a link to Lex Friedman's podcast where he interviews the CEO of Perplexity. Now, I find Perplexity really interesting because it has actually changed my workflow, and I know you use it a lot as well. And for those who haven't used it yet, saying, well, what's the difference with ChatGPT? Perplexity is like a cross between a search engine and ChatGPT. It still does the search, it gets the sources and the citations, but then responds to you in a natural language. And I think in some ways Google has to be more fearful of what they're doing, because that's a totally new category that hasn't been done before, right?
Yeah, and Perplexity's they've changed. I mean, I used it when it first came out, and it was quite nascent at the time. I thought the UI was okay. It was a bit clunky. The information was a bit jagged. But now when you use it, it flows so easily. The sources are very accurate. And they mention the references. You can power it by different models. You can do follow-up questions that ask for some context every now and then. You can turn them into blogs. So the way that we consume and share information has changed massively. And Perplexity for me is the best software of its kind.
And that's what was interesting in the interview that he gave. He talked about, are you in competition with Google? His answer is, no, I'm not. I don't see it. I think we're a separate category. And so is it a separate category? And yet, I'm looking at my workflow at the moment. I'm still using Google to do search. I'm using ChatGPT for generative stuff, but I'm using Perplexity for a totally different use case where I want an answer, but I don't want to search. I don't want to have to go through a bunch of links and try and work out what link's best, go through the spam, go through the ads. So it's for a different use case. It's I guess in some ways it has replaced me using Wikipedia.
Yes, but they're interlinked because Perplexity pages, which is a new feature from Perplexity, are being indexed and ranked within Google, and they're shooting right up to the first pages. So the usage or the credibility behind Perplexity's information is being ranked by Google very effectively. You can see the value. And people pay a lot of money, right, for SEO engines and all these different things, search engine optimization tools. But these pages are jumping right to the forefront. So Perplexity is right up there. But again, the progression and the advancement of these AI technologies is huge. Question for you then, James, what was your biggest takeaway from that Perplexity interview with Lex Friedman?
Well, I think it probably was that he doesn't see themselves as competing with Google as a separate category, but also the fact that they've got their eye like Apple and all the other companies, they're thinking 3-5 years into the future. You know, we're grappling now with the current state of large language models and AI and various other machine learning algorithms. They're 3 or 5 years ahead. So I thought it was interesting listening to where he thinks things are going and how much more natural the answers are going to be maybe in 3 or 5 years' time. Well, probably less than that. And then the other thing I probably took away from it, and I have to admit, I don't think I've got to the end of it because it was a good 3 hours. So I might change my mind when I'm finished. But there was a long discussion around their advertising model. They need to work out how they're going to monetize Perplexity and how ads are going to work within Perplexity. So he's grappling with that at the moment. And he basically said, we won't do it until it's natural. Until it doesn't feel like it's an ad. And actually that's something that Google does pretty well. Maybe not at the beginning, but now actually usually the ads that they put are relevant. Like if you click on an ad, it usually is. So I think he's looking at that saying, look, we don't want to just plonk an ad in for the monetization. We want to make sure it feels natural and it works well. So yeah. I'm using it all the time. It's another one of those tabs that I just constantly pin to my taskbar, and I'm thinking, how did I live without it before?
So are you saying that Perplexity hasn't paid to talk about them? Because when I searched up, AI in project management the other day in Perplexity, one of your articles from the APM in February came up.
Oh, well, that's that little 50 quid I must have slipped.
It just spouts any old nonsense, James, isn't it?
That's the ego trip I needed. I'm just going on to there's lots in the newsletter, but we're just skimming the surface. But there was a really good quote that I picked up from a guy called Dare Abasango, and he talks about the difference between augmentation and automation. That really got me thinking quite a lot, and actually changing some of my own kind of internal strategies. What he says is there's a big difference between tech as augmentation versus automation. He says augmentation, and in brackets he says think Excel and accountants. And for our point of view, that could be Excel and surveyors, Excel and project managers. So augmentation, think Excel and accountants, benefits workers, whilst automation, and he gives the analogy of traffic lights versus traffic wardens, benefits capital. And then this is the bit that really kind of got me thinking. So LLMs are controversial because tech is best at augmentation, but is being sold by lots of vendors as automation. And when he say tech, he's talking about the LLM tech. So people are selling it as automation, but it's actually only augmentation. Do you think that's true?
Do I think that's true? I think to some extent, yes. So augmentation is more focused on delivering value to the worker. I mean, in looking at the key differences, augmentation supports and enhances human work. Automation is more typically focused on performing tasks independently. So I think augmentation is more focused on supporting workers and users, whereas automation is more likely to benefit capital, organizations. What I would say on that is that yes, because automation can create job displacements. So people who have certain jobs which can be replaced by AI, they have to then adapt to new roles. However, what I would say of devil's advocate is that value is still being created, right? And if you can create value at a societal level through less effort, then I think that's actually creating more value. But then again, the argument is that the benefit of this change lands unevenly. So someone might lose their job because of automation, whereas augmentation, there's a level of upskill. You can change them to improve their role and get them to do better. But this is why you're getting conversation around UBI. Because if you're going to create a lot of value with less effort, it actually lends to that argument of having something like universal basic income. So
I don't think we're there. I think the quote is broadly correct in terms of what we're doing at the moment. And the state of the tech is augmenting, and it's changing workflows, but it's augmenting what we do. I think it's only a matter of time before that becomes automation. And I think it will be it won't happen overnight. You won't wake up one day and say, we're now in automation. It will be a slow iteration, and more stuff will become automated. And before you know it, you've got all that stuff I used to do is now just being done by the LLM.
So at a personal level, I think that there's some level of risk because you have job displacement. But I think at a more societal level, I think the value creation is a lot more from less effort. So I think this is why there's a slight conflict, but I would agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to also touch on, we talk about something which we haven't really talked about much in the newsletter, but I think it's quite important for people to realise they can do this within the project delivery function. And I'm using ChatGPT, but I believe they've all got this function. So we put a tip of the week, Yoshi, don't we? Every week. But the tip that I put this week is personalising your ChatGPT instructions. So within ChatGPT, you can actually go in and you can give it some personalisation. So you just go in through settings and you go to personalisation and you can define your tone. So it's really, really simple. You literally just go in and you say how you want the LMM to react. And work with you. So a good example with mine, because we're British, I always say, always respond in British English as a overriding instruction, because the LM in itself will always write with Americanizations. You can put other things in, like keep your answers concise and to the point. You can say, do not make things up. You can say, provide citations. You can say, avoid expressions of remorse or apology. All these things. So I've spent quite a bit of time now, and I mainly use ChatGPT, but I do use some of the others as well, and you can do the same in those, of creating this personalization so that I don't have to keep going back in and asking the large language model to change its responses. Yeah. And I think that's more powerful than people are given credit for, because you really can get some of your own tone across. And the really good thing is, it's not a one attempt thing. You can do it and then you come back in, you can keep refining it. I've got mine to the point now where I'm pretty happy with it. It's pretty much starting to sound like me. It's starting to not go off on tangents. So I think for all the listeners, have a go at that. There's a detailed instruction in the newsletter, in the latest one, about how to do it. But you can probably just search for this as well, can't you? Have you personalised yours, Yoshi?
Yeah, so you can look at different angles. You can get it to speak in the way that you speak, but that would mean that you're using a lot of the information and you're copying and pasting and using that, right? When you communicate with others, you can also look at it at the angle of how you consume information. So I'm someone who gets very frustrated with long-winded responses, and I don't really like to understand the workings out. So if you ask it a question, I can say in my custom instructions or personalization, don't show me your working out, just give me the answer. And it can do that so I can consume it better. But you can also ask it to give you information out in like mnemonics, to memorize information. And also, I used to use it. I used to say, so
explain for the listeners what you mean by mnemonics.
Mnemonics. So basically, it's a cognitive technique to help you understand and remember certain topics. So when you've got a long paragraph of something, mnemonics can help you just pick up some key information, just 4 words that help you understand that paragraph so you can remember it. So it's all about how you consume information, but also if you are of a particular role, let's say you're a project manager within a certain industry, you can put that in your personalization. So when you're then asking it questions, it's going to give you information back in the context of a project manager within that industry. So if you can say, okay, how can I leverage this technology now? And it will give you the response back, maybe generally, but it will also say to you, okay, but within your role as a project manager within construction, this is how you can leverage it. So you've not got to keep building out long-winded prompts. You can build it into that level of personalization, which is really useful. So there's some really innovative way of using personalization. I mean, you can even ask ChatGPT, how can I personalize this even further? So it's like a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, exactly. And I know the memory feature kind of does some of that automatically as well to some extent, but I still think the personalization overrides it. So everyone just check it out. It takes 5 minutes to create it yourself, and it really does increase the not necessarily the accuracy, but the feeling that, okay, I like this answer. It sounds a bit more like what I would write. So
maybe the validity of it.
Yeah, the validity, and I think just the general kind of feel-good factor from the responses, rather than a lot of people kind of, if you're starting on the AI journey or the generative journey, you might have used ChatGPT and say, that's awful, I'm never going to use that again. I've heard a few people say that. By using this personalization, you can change that perception straight away, because you're already given it a kind of insight into the way that you like responses to be structured. So that's really cool. I just want to go through a couple. As always, there's quite a few stories, but there's one in particular. It was a study around AI in construction, It was from PBC today, and it says that more than 3/4 of senior industry decision makers in the large UK firms have high expectations for the use of AI in construction. So this is a bit of good news, I think, because we've seen other studies which are a little bit more balanced. But this research, it was commissioned by the IFS, seems to paint a picture that, industry leaders are starting to understand that this is going to have a high impact on the industry. Did you get a chance to read this one, Yoshi?
I've not read that, but when they mention high expectation, what exactly is it are they referring to?
It's the adoption. So I think it says about 68% of construction decision makers think that the industry is adopting AI at a faster rate than others. So there's an increased kind of optimism and an increased optimism on the benefits. So there was a sample indicates that the executives and board members have high expectations for the AI's ability to enhance market knowledge. So enabling people to find out more about what's going on. And then a further, actually it's 29% of the survey respondents said AI will boost product or service innovation and create consistent growth opportunities. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but then it does say also that there's obstacles which will slow it in the construction sector. So 42% of the respondents indicated that their legacy-based technology landscape is hindering the progress. Whilst there's this high optimism, and I think people finally understanding that technology isn't going away and it has the ability to have a high impact, they also recognise that their legacy systems is maybe getting in the way of taking as much of that potential progress as it could do.
Yeah, and this is kind of a warning sign. I mean, this shows you that you have to be cognizant of vendor lock-in. I think you have to be aware of actually when you build systems to operate within your business, you have to be aware of scalability and interoperability. And I think these are some of the issues. Now we're seeing, because AI, and we have moved from something which was less digital in the last, 15, 20 years, something which is now highly digital in how we deliver our projects. So people might not have really predicted that within some of these businesses, but now there's a lot of retrospective work that needs to be done to try and create that transition so you can enable more AI technologies and the adoption of it. But I think this is an issue that's rife within any industry.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was interesting that a lot of people think that construction is doing better. We never hear that stat really, but it's also about trying to dig a little bit deeper, because whilst they're optimistic, when you go more into the research, it actually says that they think between 1 and 3 years until we're really starting to see the impacts. And so I thought actually that looks quite a long time in the future. So people were answering the question in terms of, yes, we can see the benefit. Yes, we think it's going to have an impact, and that looks quite positive. But when you go deeper into it, they're still thinking in timescales of 1 to 3 years.
But do you think that's because? But do you think that's because of their unknown? Because they might not know too much about AI, so they're saying, 1 to 3 years, we can say it's got more time. It's like when the ChatGPT thing came out, right? People think, this is not going to have any impact yet. And then it happened, they reached X amount of users faster than any other company have, right? Remember we saw that chart? Yeah. So is that because it's an unknown still for them?
But I think it's mainly because of their experience of adoption generally, not just tech, within the project delivery sphere, means that things always take longer. So they're probably looking at saying, this is interesting. I can see how it's going to benefit us. But judging by my biases and what I've seen before in the industry, these things don't happen overnight. So
and it's a bit like what Philip was saying earlier when we interviewed Philip from Construct AI. He called construction, what did he call it? Baptism of fire. Baptism
of fire. Well, it is, it is a different industry. My worry there is that even though it looks positive on the surface, actually what it's saying is that 1 to 3 years is too long a time, really, because I think by then, what will be on GPT 5, 6, 7 will be in the. It might be too late. It might be too late for companies to understand. And this is what I loved about the discussion with Phil for Construct AI, who said that we haven't really got time to wait about and think about. We just got to dive in and start playing with it and learn as you go. Look. On the surface, it's positive. It means that people are starting to appreciate that this technology is not going away. It's going to have an impact.
They're embracing it.
They're embracing it to the extent that they can see it's not going away. I think that last stat, though, around 1 to 3 years means I don't think everyone's fully woken up to how fast it's moving, though.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've got any others. There's one I wanted to cover just as a bit of a funny one at the end. Is there any other stories you wanted to cover?
Well, is the one that you're going to mention the McDonald's story?
Of course it is. Yeah, we can't not do that one.
So we've just moved from what is it? Top execs being confident that AI will be adopted and it's going to have an impact within 1 to 3 years. And yes, AI is great because it can do a lot of things, and it's got a strong level of reasoning at human level. I mean, Ilya's looking at safe super intelligence, and then we come to this BBC article about McDonald's, and the headline is bacon ice cream. And nugget overload sees misfired McDonald's AI withdrawn.
See, I've got a different take from this. I think the AI knows what people want. And everyone wants bacon ice cream, surely.
And you can look at this at two angles, right? Okay, so just to give some context, McDonald's have partnered with ABI to develop voice recognition software so AI can automate and process orders. So you go to it, maybe through the drive-through, and you ask it what your order is, and it will take that for you. It will process it. So it's called automated order taking, and you will pick up your food. Okay. The problem is that it was giving, like you mentioned, some of these weird recipes. People were saying hundreds of nuggets. But the weird thing about this is, even though there's a level of AI hallucination is making things up, this is great for marketing, right? So
Sky, etc.
Yeah, people are getting 30,000 views. So this woman said that she, on TikTok, she tried to convince the AI that she wanted caramel ice cream, for it to only add multiple stacks of butter to her order, right? And then another person had 360,000 views because it resulted in 9 orders of tea being added to her bill. First of all, no one really orders tea at McDonald's. Maybe in the morning. It's amazing. But look, McDonald's haven't said that they're going to stop doing this. They said they've gone back to the drawing board.
That's exactly what I took from it. They, the headline is, we're stopping AI. That's not what they're saying at all. They say they're pausing, and they say that the technology is proven to have some of the most comprehensive capabilities in the industry. Whilst McDonald's is reevaluating and refining its plans, we look forward to continuing to work with them on a variety of so they're not stopping. And I think this is a real good lesson to the project delivery sphere, which is, whilst it's a bit light-hearted, it's true that we are still in the early days of this technology, and it's going to move at a pace. And if you've had a bad experience, whether or not from a personal level, if you're just someone who's experimented and had the bad experience, or if you're a company looking at developing stuff like this, you can't let one bad experience or one issue like this stop you, because it's only going to get better. The technology is only going to get better. So it's not like this is it. This is as good as it gets. Therefore, we're going to wash our hands of it. Yes, there's going to be mishaps along the way, but like Phil Clifford Brown from Construct AI said, you just got to go and do it, right? You just got to try.
Yeah, you just got to go and do it. But this article actually lends back to what we were discussing about the quote. If an AI hallucinates, and this is within a project context, there's a lot at stake. So you have to be aware of what it's giving you and then question what it's giving you. And this is where you're seeing, if you treat LLMs as automation, you have a problem, because you are then not intervening and bringing your own expertise to review that, assess it, and then make a decision. But if you're approaching it as augmentation, then it's empowered you. You still have the agency and the obligation to question what it's giving you. So within McDonald's, obviously, it's obvious that they're making mistakes. But within a project context, only until you have to dive deeper sometimes will you actually recognize that it's hallucinated. So I think looking back at that quote, I would then agree with you. I think LLMs are controversial to this point because we're pitching them as automation software, because humans want to save time, right? Automation is directly linked with time, whereas augmentation is a bit more loosely related, because you might still take the same amount of time to do something, but you're doing it a lot better.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the key point comes in. And like I said, again, and I mentioned Phil's interview, one of the questions I asked him was around augmentation. And with Construct AI, do you have to have a certain level of expertise to be able to use it? Because you have to interpret the results you're getting out of these AI models and see the validity and the reliability of what it's giving you.
Mm-hmm. Nice link back to that quote, I've got to say.
I'm getting podcast savvy now.
And on that note, I think we can call it a night there. But before we do, I just want to remind everyone that the newsletter is available to subscribe to. Please share with your network. we can't thank our readers and our listeners enough. We've got up to nearly 3,000 subscribers to the newsletter now, and our podcast is going from strength to strength. So what you can do for us is please subscribe to both the newsletter and the podcast. Please share, please leave reviews. All these things massively help. We really are on a mission just to get this information to as many people's hands as possible and make sure people are just not scared about what's happening in the project delivery space in particular. This is easy to dive in, have a go, and it's nothing to be scared of. So please get the information out as much as you can and join us again. We're going to have our interview with Construct AI on Friday. We're now splitting the podcast into 2 separate episodes, one roundup with me and Yoshi once a week, and then a special usually every week with a guest. So you get more opportunities to hear our voices, but we really do thank you for tuning in and listening and sharing and spreading the word. So on that note, everyone, goodbye, and we'll see you next week.